Coming up in today's newscast, the Israeli military enters day 2 of Operation Northern Shield. A fifth suspect in the murder of 17-year-old Yara Ayoub is arrested, and Albert Einstein's famed God letter sells for an amazing $3 million at auction. Tensions are high but seemingly calm along the northern border Wednesday morning as Israeli Defense Forces continue Operation Northern Shield, a large-scale initiative to find and destroy Hezbollah attack tunnels coming into the Golan. The operation is expected to take weeks, and select army reservists have also already been called into the north to assist in the project. It's thought that around 10 Hezbollah tunnels exist, and just the first tunnel reportedly exposed Tuesday morning extends around 40 meters or 120 feet into Israel. It's also about 25 to 30 meters or 100 feet deep through limestone and uneven terrain and will take days to demolish.
These cross-border terror tunnels were built by Hezbollah with direct support and funding from Iran. They were built with one purpose in mind: to attack and murder innocent Israeli men, women, and children. This is a grave violation of Israel's sovereignty and a gross violation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701. It is an unacceptable act of wanton aggression.
Further, though the IDF says that the tunnels aren't yet operational, they are likely manned, as shown in a video the IDF presented during Tuesday's press conference. In the footage supposedly captured just hours before, 2 Hezbollah operatives are seen approaching a small army robot, which scares them away with an explosive charge when they get too close. Now, the tunnels are the most immediate part of this operation, but Israeli officials say that this is just the first of many steps in securing the northern border. Following the tunnels, the IDF will then go after Hezbollah's Iranian-supplied missile arsenal, which is reportedly larger than that of many EU countries at around 100,000. Finally, it's also reported that cabinet ministers were discussing this threat back in November while also debating a large-scale response to Hamas in Gaza, but it was ultimately decided that that would be a distraction. For this reason, Prime Minister Netanyahu apparently insisted on holding the defense portfolio himself after Avigdor Lieberman's resignation. Joining us now via Skype with more on Operation Northern Shield and more specifically how Israel will deal with Hezbollah's rocket arsenal is Dr. Eli Kalman, senior researcher at the National Institute for Counterterrorism in Herzliya. Dr. Kalman, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so my first question, Dr. Kalman, is, Are we going to see an escalation here along the north, or is Lebanon and Hezbollah more likely to kind of allow this to continue as long as it's on Israel's side?
Interestingly, for the moment, the Hezbollah itself as an organization is very quiet, and there is no real reaction. But from the hints of the Lebanese authorities, especially the chairman of the parliament, Nabi Berri, it is understood that if the work would be done only on the Israeli side, there is no real threat of escalation. But again, you never know what happens, especially if the other tunnels are more sophisticated. Perhaps they are more important for Hezbollah. So we have to see, and clearly IDF is prepared for any scenario.
All right, now we heard earlier from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and many other officials that, this is a gross violation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which, established the demilitarized zone between the Golan and Lebanon. So, is the UN likely to do anything about this?
Our experience, historical experience, says that nothing really has been done. For instance, when the resolution 1701 asked not to send weapons to Hezbollah, a clear embargo, international embargo, there were only German ships near the Beirut port, harbor, but actually most of the weapons arrived through Damascus and the Syrian border. Nobody stopped them. So I don't see any real change in the near future. Perhaps the UNIFIL and the international pressure, especially by the United States and European countries headed by France, which has special interest in Lebanon, perhaps it will help to bring some more pressure inside Lebanon. The problem is that there is no government in Lebanon. In many senses, the government or the existence of a government depends on the Hezbollah, which controls most of the parliament.
Sure. Well, I mean, we do know that Hezbollah is now, at least in Lebanon's parliament, a legitimate party and a very strong one. But aside from that, let's talk now about their missile arsenal, which is expected to be larger than most EU countries at around 150,000 precision-guided rockets. What does Israel plan to do about that?
First of all, we must understand that although the tunnels are very important, because this was the tool to be used in case they wanted to attack Israeli territory in the Galilee, small towns and villages, and it was an important part of the operation in a case of war. But still, the real strategic threat are the long-range missiles, not only hundreds of thousands, but several thousands probably, which are the precise long-range missiles. And if they are fired once, several hundreds or several dozens of them, we saw what happened in Hamas several weeks ago. The fact that they fired 500 missiles almost on the same hours, it not neutralized, but it challenged a lot our anti-missile defense. So this arsenal, a precise arsenal, which they want to develop and upgrade, is threatening the strategic targets. I mean, the airports, military airports, the power stations, the central command, if you want, and the Ministry of Defense in central Tel Aviv, and also clearly the civil population. But that's one of the reasons that Israel is now making pressure, publicizing the information that we have, that many of these missiles are probably in civil places like the stadium in Beirut. They are arriving probably directly through the Beirut airport lately. And also we are asking, I mean, our government to put pressure on the Lebanese in order to stop this kind of activity. If it will not stop, I think there are good chances that Israel will have to decide. The Israeli leadership, they will have to decide if they continue to leave Hezbollah to arm really with all these strategic weapons and do nothing and threaten much more Israel in the future.
All right, Dr. Kalman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Moving on, the United Nations Security Council met on Tuesday for a closed-door discussion over Iran's missile testing program. France and the United Kingdom had called for the meeting in light of Iran's testing last week of medium-range ballistic missiles, which have the ability to carry nuclear warheads and strike anywhere in the Middle East and even parts of Europe. France said it was concerned by the missile tests, describing them as, quote, provocative and destabilizing, and they echoed United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's remarks that it was in violation of Resolution 2231. Likewise, British Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt called the missile test, quote, provocative, threatening, and inconsistent, end quote, and said that Britain was determined that it should cease. Iran, however, has claimed that its missile testing program is not in any violation, as it is defensive in nature. But in light of the developments, Brian Hook, the senior policy advisor to the U.S. Secretary of State and United States Special Representative for Iran, took the opportunity to repeatedly call on the EU to reinstate sanctions on Iran over these actions. Missile testing such as this, as well as other bad faith Iranian actions, are also the quoted reasons President Donald Trump withdrew from the JCPOA in the first place. On Monday evening, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also met with United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Brussels, where the two lit Hanukkah candles ahead of their closed meeting. In the meet, the two primarily discussed Iran and other regional issues like Operation Northern Shield and Hezbollah's massive rocket arsenal, and Netanyahu was accompanied by the head of the Mossad, the head of the National Security Council, and the Israeli military secretary. Prime Minister Netanyahu chaired a meeting of the Ministerial Committee on Violence Against Women on Wednesday morning, and in his opening remarks, he equated violence against women with terrorism, and he said that the government needs to help women victims of violence while at the same time giving a, quote, punch to the face to abusive husbands. Netanyahu vowed to take the issue seriously, saying, quote, there is a lot of work to be done, end quote, and the committee met one day after a nationwide women's strike on Tuesday to shed light on the issue and demand that the government implement a national plan to reduce violence against women.
I know that the first thing they want the government to give the money they promised. They promised 250 million shekels. And it was promised a year ago, after they already built the program and wrote everything, how to deal with this violence. But this money never arrived.
The strike was organized in the wake of last week's murder of two young girls, 13-year-old Silvana Tsegai and 16-year-old Yara Ayoub, and their deaths bring the total number of women and girls murdered in Israel this past year to 24, marking a dramatic increase in domestic violence. The call to protest was answered by tens of thousands of men and women who gathered at Tel Aviv's Rabin Square Tuesday evening for a demonstration. This was preceded by a day of marches and events in major cities and intersections around the country, and a nationwide initiative which saw women leave work at 10 a.m. for 24 minutes in honor of those killed. The call to protest received overwhelming support from over 300 Israeli institutions as well, including the Knesset, the Office of the President of Israel, local municipalities, the Histadrut Labor Federation, Israeli universities, and women's organizations who pushed the issue to the top of the public agenda.
I think this is a very important moment where we all need to unite together, women from all spectrum of the political sides, from all different shapes and parts of the Israeli society. I think this has a very strong calling to give some kind of strength and empowerment for women who are in this vicious cycle of violence, in order to give them a little bit of strength so that they are able to get out of this vicious cycle.
In other news, in an historic visit to the country, the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, welcomed on Sunday the Sephardic chief rabbi of Jerusalem, Rabbi Shlomo Moshe Amar. But the visit has become highly divisive now, as it comes just a few days after Maduro compared United States President Donald Trump to Hitler and, quote, the people of Venezuela to the Jews during the Holocaust. Now TV's Latin American correspondent Joy Gavijon is here with more on the story.
Thanks, Aaron. So let's start with this visit. As you said, on Sunday, the Sephardic chief rabbi of Jerusalem, who's also the former Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel, met with the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro at the Miraflores government palace in Caracas. And the reason for this meeting and this visit was to celebrate and honor the chief rabbi of Venezuela, Rabbi Isaac Cohen, for his 40 years of work with the Jewish community in the country. And during the meeting, Rabbi Isaac Cohen was decorated by President Maduro.
All right, so far that's not such a crazy story.
Well, what's more interesting is that Rabbi Amar gave President Maduro his blessing and expressed his good wishes for the people in Venezuela. And when I say that this is interesting, it's because of the political instability, the hunger, the poverty, and the violence that the country is suffering under Maduro's presidency. And not only that, we have to remember that this is a government characterized by a strong anti-Semitic rhetoric that dates back to the presidency of Hugo Chavez. So we're talking about a left-wing regime that's criticized for undermining democracy, and a government that has also expressed and shown its support for Iran, Syria, and even terror organizations like Hamas.
All right, well, I guess that explains why many Jews have left and are still leaving Venezuela, unfortunately, many of them fleeing to Israel. Actually.
Exactly, yes. The Venezuelan Jewish community actually used to be one of the largest of South America, around 25,000 when Chavez became president. And now there are only a few thousand that still live there. The ongoing crisis made it impossible for people to stay. Just the hyperinflation alone, it's crazy. Imagine that $1 equals almost 250,000 bolivares. And to this, we have to add the lack of medicine, food, water, and also the violence in the streets.
Something that apparently Maduro blames the United States for, I understand, according to his latest statements anyway.
Yes. On Thursday, Maduro had to announce another 150% raise of the monthly minimum wage, something that he has done 25 times since 2013. But as you said, in his statement, he blamed the United States for it, specifically for imposing harsh economic sanctions that block Venezuela from financial markets. Now, Maduro calls himself a victim of an economic war led by the United States, and he even compared US President Donald Trump to Hitler. He attacked Trump, saying, quote, just like Hitler persecuted the Jewish people, Donald Trump persecutes the people of Venezuela, end quote.
All right, well, that is nothing more than a shocking and terrible comparison, honestly.
Yes.
And I'm curious, why an Israeli chief rabbi would seemingly endorse this rhetoric, or this president.
That's a good question.
But it does sound more likely that the Rabbi Amar was maybe speaking more generally about the people of Venezuela. I'd like to think, regardless of the politics of their president. Either way, this is a crisis that's still ongoing, and we'll have to see how it continues. So, thanks for your report, Joy.
Thank you, Aaron.
Much to the surprise of the public and contrary to reports from Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit, the Israeli High Court of Justice earlier this week again issued an extension for voting on the Haredi military conscription bill. The government has now been given a 6-week stay, placing the new deadline on January 15th, 2019. The Prime Minister was originally hoping for a 4-month extension, which, had it been granted, would have enabled Netanyahu to avoid the vote at least until scheduled elections in November 2019. This is because the Premier could have used the upcoming Knesset recesses to delay the vote even further. But now, given the new deadline and the dire straits the coalition has found itself in, Netanyahu is caught between two choices. The first is to pass the amendment as written with the help of opposition parties like Avigdor Lieberman's Israel Beitenu and Yair Lapid's Yesh Atid. But ultra-Orthodox parties within the coalition would no doubt drop out over such a decision, forcing early elections in May. Already last week, ahead of the new extension, ultra-Orthodox communities demonstrated against the government and in favor of a blanket exemption from the military. Nearly 30 Haredi protesters were arrested in the clashes. The second choice would be to simply not enforce the law, which would cause early elections as well, though, as the High Court has deemed the current conscription laws to be discriminatory. It's unlikely that a third extension will be offered too, meaning we'll find out one way or another next month. As it stands, only around 7,250 Haredi soldiers are enlisted in the IDF, nearly a third of which are listed as lone soldiers. The Shin Bet, one of Israel's primary intelligence agencies, has just announced that it is widening its search for local innovative startups with great cutting-edge solutions, and they're doing this with Tel Aviv University's academic-based venture capital program, TAU Ventures. ILTV's Doriel Mizrahi has the rest. Doriel, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Right.
So this is the second year that they're doing this, and the first year they focused on AI, robotics, and this year they're going to focus more on fintech, and they just want to bring out innovative companies that they could give money to and resources to help them in their accelerator program is what they call it.
Okay, so yeah, maybe let's go into that a little bit more. How's the accelerator program help these companies?
Okay,
exactly?
So yeah, like you said, the Tel Aviv University and the Defense Force, they joined forces to do this program, and what they do, it's a 4-month program. They're going to pick 9 startups at very early stage. Sure. They're going to give them $50,000, no equity, no restrictions. Each. No equity, no restrictions, like I said. They're going to give them mentors in their hub and really going to push them forward. It's amazing. So, okay, why ultimately is the Shin Bet doing this, though? Okay, so one, they want to find talent. They want to collaborate with the most innovative technologies. They want to get the best people out there. Ideally also to further, for security reasons, to find technological reasons. They always want to be one step ahead of the game. Of course. And this is the way to do it. And it's not only that the Shin Bet is doing this, they're joining forces with an academic, it's backed by Tel Aviv University, and I think that's amazing because that's where you find they have the funds,
it's just the most
they find the talent,
people, yeah.
And it's a really good hub. And if you have an idea, you have till December 30th to sign up.
I'm brimming with ideas.
There
clearly.
You go.
That's why I'll be next on their list. They'll choose me, I'm sure.
Hopefully, yeah.
Doriel, thank you so much. This is amazing, and thanks for your report.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right, a handwritten letter by Albert Einstein in which he offers his thoughts on God and his Jewish identity has just sold for $2.9 million at an auction in New York. The 1.5-page letter, dubbed the God Letter, was written in 1954 and had been estimated by Christie's to go for around $1.5 million. The statement from Christie's explained that the, quote, remarkably candid private letter was written a year before his death and remains the most fully articulated expression of Einstein's religious and philosophical views, end quote. In the letter, which was written in his native German to German philosopher Erich Gutkind, Einstein writes, quote, "The word God is for me nothing but the expression and product of human weaknesses. The Bible, a collection of venerable but still rather primitive legends," end quote. He continues and writes, quote, "No interpretation, no matter how subtle, can for me change anything about this," end quote. The physicist also discusses his own Jewish identity, writing that, quote, "For me, the unadulterated Jewish religion is, like all other religions, an incarnation of primitive superstition." He adds that the Jewish people to whom I gladly belong and in whose mentality I feel profoundly anchored, still for me does not have any different kind of dignity from all other peoples, end quote. This is not the first time Einstein's letters have been put up for auction. Just last year, a note he penned on happy living sold for $1.56 million in Jerusalem. Next, let's check in with the one and only woman who takes ILTV viewers on the most amazing tours across the Holy Land, host of ILTV's Cruisin Israel, Natalie Tursky. Natalie, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Aaron. And seriously, let me just tell you that I am so excited to tell you a little bit about this week's show. We did something truly unique to Israel, and it's something that can really only be done here. Max and I went to visit the Squadron, which offers the latest flight simulator technology.
All right, well, flight simulators have been around for a little while now, so what makes this one so unique to Israel?
Well, at the Squadron, you can truly see what it's like to not only fly an F-16, but to do so as part of an Israeli Air Force squadron. Participants actually get to suit up like a real pilot, attend a pre-flight briefing, just as it's done in the Israeli Air Force, and get behind the same set of controls that you can find in the cockpit of a real F-16.
All right, well, I understand we have a short clip at the Squadron from this week's Cruisin Israel, which I'm very excited to see, so let's check it out.
For decades, the F-16 has been at the forefront for keeping the skies above Israel safe.
With Israel having some of the most highly trained combat pilots in the world, the Israeli Air Force has earned itself a lasting legacy. And today, these pilots want to share the Israeli Air Force experience by allowing visitors to get behind the controls and go hands-on with the latest in flight simulator technology. That's the closest I will ever be to flying a plane in my life. Ooh. Whoa!
That is so cool.
Yep, and that's just one of the stops we made on this week's show. So be sure to tune in to Cruisin Israel for the rest of the latest attractions that Israel has to offer.
Absolutely will. Natalie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Aaron.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Sharing is caring, especially during the holidays. And so today's word is lachlok, meaning to share. You can lachlok or share memories, your time, toys, the check at dinner, or maybe just that really rich dessert that you wanted to try. But here at ILTV, what we're mechalkim or sharing this evening is today's Hanukkah candle lighting with three wonderful guests from the Citizens House Achuzat Poleg, Israel. So without further ado, please welcome Judy Naor, Dalia Ranot, and Dalia Levov. Thank you, all three of you, for coming in so much today.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
It's a pleasure. It's a real pleasure to have you. Dalia, tell us a little bit about the Poleg House.
Yeah, it is a retirement community, and it's for people who love life, and we can do whatever we want. We have our own place. We don't, we cook our own meals if we want. If we want, we go to the restaurant. We play cards, we make things, we just having fun.
It's a real beautiful place.
And is everybody friends here? Were you friends before you came here?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Amazing.
The people are beautiful, very intelligent community.
Before. I did meet Dalia before, but never met Judy. And
we knew each other.
Very good friends.
Anyway.
So that's amazing. It sounds like such a fun kind of place to be.
It is.
And all right, well, I don't want to take up more of your time. Shall we start the lighting? All right, so I'll give you the shamash here.
Okay.
And we'll. All right.
Thank you.
Let's start. Here you are.
Baruch
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam אשר עשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להדליק נר של חנוכה. Amen.
All right, shall we move it? You want to move it? All right, let's do the second pair over here.
Okay.
All right.
Here you are.
There you are.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשת ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה. אמן. ישועתי לך נאה לשבח תיכוני בתפילתי ושם תודה נזבח לעת אחים מנבח מצר המנבח אז אזמור בשיר מזמור חנוכת המזבח אז אגמור בשיר מזמור חנוכת המזבח.
Thank you all so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to have you here. It's so nice.
Thank you very
Judy,
much.
Thank you
It
so
was
much,
great.
Dalia. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy with a chance of light showers and a low of about 58, or 14 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow it should be stormy and a bit cold with a drop in temperatures to a high of 65 or 18 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.73 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.